session on behalf of Elsina and also on behalf of the government of Tamil Nadu, who's the host state for this event this time. We have been having this event in Chennai for the last 10 years every year. But this time, the physical event was not possible because of COVID and all the restrictions, of course. So we thought that we'll go ahead with the online session. So this is a session I think which is very relevant today, and that is why we have given this the name of establishing supply chains and manufacturing hubs. Supply chains and manufacturing hubs, and what is the that manufacturing hubs are likely because you're all experts in your in your domains. To Dr. Ravi Bhattal, Mr. Guru Prasad Mudlapur, Mr. Mahesh Babu, Mr. Rangarajan, so welcome. And we are still waiting for General Chandele, who I guess will be joining us in a minute or two. So I will not take more time, and I will hand over to Ravi to please take the session forward. Over to you, Ravi. Thank you.
Thank you, Raju. Can you hear me?
Yes, very, very clearly. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So welcome everybody to the session on shifting supply chains and manufacturing hubs, the impact on the Indian ESDM sector. I'll just do a quick introduction of the panel participants, and then we'll get into about a 5-minute set of opening remarks by each of the participants, and then get into Q&A, and then we'll close out. So let me start with introducing Mahesh Babu. Mahesh needs no introduction, actually. He is the CEO and Managing Director of Mahindra Electric, which is a pioneer in electric vehicles. He has completed his MBA from Carnegie Mellon and his engineering from BITS Pilani. He's been at Mahindra for over 20 years. He's worked in design and development of engine and vehicle platforms, and he's launched under his guidance 4 new electric vehicles and mobility platform within Mahindra. So welcome, Mahesh. Also wanted to introduce Guru Prasad Mudlapur. Guru is Managing Director and President of Bosch Automotive Electronics in India. He also heads the project for electrification in India within Bosch. He's been with Bosch since 2008, and previously he was head of engineering for the control unit systems within Bosch. He's lived abroad, worked at NXP in Singapore in the Netherlands in the packaging unit, and then come back to India over the last several years. He's an engineer from Bangalore University. Next is Ilan Chalian. Ilan is the Vice President and Managing Director of Sanmina. I think somebody's Mr. Chandel, General Chandele, can you put yourself on mute, please? Thank you.
Well, I'm trying, but I'm not getting unmuted.
Oh, okay.
And even my video is blocked.
Oh, is it? Okay. Raju, can you help? Okay. Ilan is the Managing Director and Vice President of Sanmina SCI in India, and he's focused quite a bit on medical electronics. And Sanmina, as you know, is a major EMS company in globally and in India as well. Also wanted to introduce General Chandele, who's formerly with the Indian Army in the Corps of the Electronics and Mechanical Engineers. and has retired from there with a distinguished career in the armed forces. Um, and he's extremely decorated person with the Param Vishisht and Ati Vishisht Seva Medal from the President of India. Welcome, General Chandele. And Mr. Rangarajan, who is CEO of Data Patterns, a defense electronics manufacturer and developer and designer. And he founded Data Patterns in 1985, a long time ago. And he's been a pioneer in developing world-class products in mission critical defense and aerospace electronic systems. So welcome, Mr. Rangarajan. So with that set of introductions, what I would like to do is request Mahesh to kick off the opening remarks and really focusing on current state of electronics manufacturing in India as it relates to automotive. What are the trends and changes happening in your industry, and how do you see localization basically playing out in India?
Thank you, Ravi. Good morning, everyone. I think it's important I start with what's happening in auto industry. Maybe my colleague Ravi Guru will be able to reflect when we started. I started my career in 1990. When we came out, it used to be passion of engineers, automobile engineers at that time, to work on combustion, emission reduction, efficiency, fuel efficiency, and many more. That used to be the passion of most of the engineers coming out of the college. Today, if you look at in 2020, almost 3 decades down the line, there is a shift in the way we operate automobile. What is automobile and what constitutes maximum of it is being challenged, because auto industry by itself is being challenged. It's not being discussed as automobile anymore. We are talking about mobility. When you talk about mobility, automobile is just a device, and the mobility becomes the primary deliverable to the customers, whether it is personal mobility or it is shared mobility or last mile or first mile mobility of people. And we are now talking about even delivery of goods through mobility. Now, if you look at what's happening on a full vehicle, electronics used to be in IC engine about 10 to 18% contribution in cost. Today, if you look at it over the past decade, it has gone up from 18% to 32%. So the value of electronics getting into automobile has substantially increased. And particularly when you looked at the tectonic shift which is happening now towards sustainable mobility, the EV industry plays a very vital role. The battery and powertrain contribution to the complete vehicle itself is more than 50%. Now, if you look at the value chain of the complete electronics on the EV, the powertrain electronics and power electronics and software contribution crosses 70% of a vehicle. Now, that means what does it do? It does a complete shift in the way OEMs behave and OEMs invest. Today, I was told globally about 70% of new innovations happens around in automobile around embedded systems and software. It's whether it is autonomous driving or it is new things. Everything is around functions and particularly embedded functions. If you look at the efforts needed today on automobile, earlier we used to spend a lot of time on interior, exterior, crash safety. I think auto industry has crossed all this. Today, as I said, 70 to 90% of the innovations in vehicle development is about embedded system. Close to 50 to 70% overall development cost of an automobile is going to be around software related to embedded system, and hence the complete R&D of automobile is getting reorganized. Today we need software engineers and embedded system engineers to a large extent, because 50 to 70% of the efforts needed to develop an automobile goes into software and function development. And hence it is important that auto industry is looking at a shift from a mechanical to electromechanical behavior of engineers. Now, what's happening around India? Let's look at it. Auto industry typically has a tradition of localizing or innovating in Europe, Japan, or in America, and then India used to follow. Indian legislation always used to be about 5 to 10 years gap between what technology used to come in Europe or US, because the auto industry were so concentrated in Europe, Japan, and North America that the technologies will fall off from there. EV and electronics is giving a level playing field for everybody. India, being IT capital, has a very large, what I would say, knowledge and capability on software and embedded systems. Sitting in Bangalore, we can say that it's one of the Silicon Valley across the world. It's going to be the area where R&D and innovation happens around electronics and software. Now that puts us in a very, what I would say, in a level playing field when we start EVs, because electric vehicle, as I said, is 70% work around software and electronics. Now we can do two way. We can import all of them and just assemble and make electric vehicles in India. Mahindra unlikely does that, and what we are doing is we are almost looking at our products, and today, except the, let's say, the cell, we make or buy everything locally. Having said that, the motors, motor controllers, chargers, DC-DCs, vehicle control units, most of them we buy within India. So does it say that we have met all the requirements and everything is being done in India? I think the IPR is being generated in India. That is very good. Now, going to supply chain, auto industry has always been plagued by supply chain. A company which becomes very successful also not only innovates products, but also makes the supply chain to work to their business requirements. Many innovative companies have not become successful just because they are not able to handle the supply chain of automotive in a right time and in right cost. And hence, if you look at electronic supply chain, today what we are looking at from auto industry is how do we vertically integrate the electronic supply chain and value add in India. For example, we have just recently installed an SMT line, which makes populated the PCB for our own vehicle control unit, motor controllers, DC-DC, everything. But unfortunately, today we don't make PCBs in India. We don't make resistors, capacitors, IGBTs, MOSFETs, any of them, and all of them are being imported. Unfortunately, they are all being produced all around the world, and India has not played a vital role in component manufacturing of electronics. So through this forum, I would say as OEMs, we are shifting from an what I would say chemical mechanical IC engines to an electromechanical EV engines for the future, which is efficient and also sustainable for the future. When we do that, auto industry needs to closely work with electronics industry, because it's the same lithium ion battery which we use in our mobile phones are being used in the in automobiles for EV. It is the same control and algorithm, resistors, capacitors, everything being used in electronics industry is going to be dominating in auto industry. And hence there is a need for both of us to collaborate and make this supply chain valuable. Recently, I was told that Kerala Electronics makes many of the components, which we never know. When we looked at the recent supply chain disruption after it happened due to COVID-19, has asked us to look at multiple areas. But I believe auto industry is in a very tipping point of transformation, and when it moves to electric, the value add of software and embedded system is going to be above 50%, and hence there is a very high possibility of collaborating with electronics industry and creating an automobile of the future. If that is so, we'll have to deeply look at IPR being developed in India, and also components getting manufactured, not only for India, but to the globe. We'll have to see how we can develop IPR and give it to the world. And we have to see how we have to play a vital role in a supply chain across the globe. I think this is a very important opportunity India should not miss in automobile. And we believe in Mahindra that we will all play a vital role in transforming this industry, not only in automobile, but also in the value chain going forward. And thank you for giving me an opportunity, Ravi. Back to you.
Thank you, Mahesh. Really appreciate that. That's very well said. I wanted to now call on Guru Prasad Mudlapur, who's the president and MD of Bosch Electronics India. Did he just rejoin? Okay. Can you hear us? Can you hear me, Guru? Are you on?
Hello, hear me?
Yes. Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
Sorry about this. I'm having some trouble with my connection. I just got kicked out. Okay, so I assume the time is now for me to give my opening statement, right?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay. So I heard most of what Mahesh said. I think he gave a very, very good introduction to where things are headed, especially in automotive electronics. So I don't think I need to add a lot more than bring in a couple of new perspectives on that. So it's extremely clear that the auto electronics sector is booming. The amount of electronics in cars will increase a lot. But let me touch upon one or two things which are going really well first. The first thing that's going well, in my view, is the extensive amount of engineering that's happening in auto electronics locally. Not just Bosch, we are one of the largest invested in local engineering for the globe, not only for India, but also all our fellow players, competitors in the automotive industry do a lot of excellent and extensive work towards building components and subsystems for the world. I heard Mahesh also touched briefly on how things are moving more embedded, more software, more functions. I think this is definitely an area which requires very competent hardware on one hand, but also a lot of software resources on the other hand to make it all function well. And I think that's the key strength we sit on, and that's going really well. The second thing I would say, and I would say this on behalf of the auto electronics industry in India, is that it's now an extremely good, high quality manufacturing setup. So a lot of them are playing a very key role here. Things are going quite well in terms of the quality levels, reliability levels, and the amount of diversity we handle as auto electronics industry. The things which we should still work on, and I guess we will get into this in detail in a Q&A session, is topics like localization. I think this is a key area where we are far away from being optimal. This is an area where we are really struggling, I would say, with almost 75% of what we do in terms of value add just being imported. So we just import, assemble, then put it out. So this is something that needs to change. We certainly need a far more conducive component ecosystem in India to make it all happen. And this is something that we should definitely focus. The second area would be the content in the cars in India or electronics in India is still at a very nascent stage, and it's definitely going on an upward
I think Guru, you cut off. You may be on mute again. Guru, you're on mute. We cannot hear you. Guru, can you hear us? We cannot hear you. I think there's something wrong with the audio here. Thank you, Guru, for your comments, and maybe we'll come back. Maybe you want to log off and come back on. Elin, we'll move to you, and if you can please comment on what Sanmina is. You've been here for a long time, and what Sanmina is doing in terms of medical electronics and other segments, and also provide an EMS perspective to more localization and what you see happening in the space.
Thanks, Ravi. Good afternoon, all. Can you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So first of all, I would like to congratulate Government of India, Tamil Nadu, and LCNA for arranging this session. It's a nice one. And I would like to give a brief background about Sanmina. Mostly all of us know that it's one of the top EMS companies in the world. And we differentiate in terms of doing high complex, mission critical, and high reliable products. We do a lot of medical, defense, aerospace, automotive, high-end computing kind of products. And our journey in building the Indian nation mission projects kind of started a decade ago. For example, we produced from this Oragadam campus in Sanmina, Chennai, for Aadhaar controller cards way back in 2007 in that time period. 2019, you might aware that our Prime Minister opened the National Supercomputing Mission in IIT Varanasi. That particular supercomputer, I think Param Shive, all the high performance server blades, hardware manufacture is done by Sanmina. And recently we are supporting the Make in India initiative, the mission of eradicating tuberculosis by 2025 across India. So we have a technology collaboration with one of our European customer, and we are producing the reagents here in this campus. And we are FDA, and we produce a lot of medical electronics in various things. And I would like to thank the industry department in Tamil Nadu and the IT department and the labor department. We didn't face a single day of lockdown or shutdown or whatever during this pandemic because of the great industry collaboration. So Tamil Nadu is an industry-friendly state, and the whole over India also transforming to support in terms of ease of doing business. So coming to the point of supply chain, I think both Mahesh and Guru touched up right on the spot that the point is, I say Sanmina is a world-class electronics manufacturing company, but I'm importing 70% of material from outside. So the content of electronics is still come from outside India. We have some localization in terms of transformers, cables, and big form factor electronics. But in terms of chips, you take it to LLPs, CSPs, BGAs, or high complex integrated chips. Those are all come from outside India. So we keep talking about localizing that with the major partners. And you might hear about SEM India. It was not kicked off well. And people always think about semiconductor industry has to be in India. And it's a huge investment, a lot of water, chemical involved. But I would recommend to go 2 steps. I think we clearly know how we pull the mobile industry to India. So we first pull the STD, semi-knock down. So we import all the boards, assemble things, and plastics, displays, everything. We did it in India. And slowly in a couple of years, we pushed the customers and the suppliers to do everything in-house in India. So now we are talking about doing the electronics assembly in India. So it happened over the last 5 years. Same thing or same approach we should do for semiconductor. So I was talking to Teradyne, Advantech, and many chip testing houses. So they are ready to come here. So what we should first do is do the SKD. For example, final testing and packaging of semiconductor industry has to come first. that doesn't need a huge infrastructure, huge investments. So that should be the first step to bring 30% out of 70% of the value add in terms of semiconductor industry. And another one, we still talk about a lot of mechanical localization is there. We did a lot of localization in mechanical, like die casting or cables or plastics, all those things. But still some portion is still come from outside. The niche technology, IMD technologies or double molding, 2K molding, still those things are depending upon some unique supplier controlling across the world. So that we have to tab and bring it over. And we proved with many of our OEMs that we had a tri-party collaboration and we brought the technology over here. That is a second point. And if you see medical, actually across the globe, India is the lowest spender for healthcare. It's in lower single digit. Even compared to the other countries, we are spending very less. And when we start to see some kind of healthcare systems improving in India and a lot of spending comparing the GDP, I think local demand will come and we will have a good ecosystem to produce medical electronics. The bottleneck for that is again FTA, like a free trade agreement with the ASEANs and some other countries. They use the FTA to produce these electronics and they are straight shipping back to us. So these are all the bottlenecks what we have. And in terms of technical skills and the ecosystems, I believe we have everything. We just need to make more awareness and bring those semiconductor industries step by step, phase by phase. I think we can start to support all the auto industries very well from these step by step initiatives. That's what I would like to share. Back to Ravi.
Thank you, Ilan. Thanks for your comments. Guru, can you hear us now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
I don't
Okay.
know whether you can hear me, but I can
Yeah,
hear
yeah,
you. Sure.
we can hear you now.
Yeah.
I think it's clear.
Yeah.
We lost you in the last 2 to 3 minutes of your what you were saying. Did you want to just?
No, I
Just
think we can continue.
okay.
I don't
You're
want
okay.
to. Yeah,
Okay.
let's go ahead.
Okay. General Chandale, if you can take some time to review really what from your end user perspective, because you used to really use defense and aerospace electronics, and you managed the um, repair, maintenance, all of the aspects of the defense electronics portion. It would be really helpful to get your perspective on where you see defense electronics, the state of defense electronics manufacturing in India, and what do you see as the need going forward to indigenize a lot more of it? I think you're on mute. Still not coming through. No. Can you hear me? Yeah, I think there's a problem with the audio on your side, I think.
Probably log on and log off should solve.
Yeah, maybe if you can log off and log on, and maybe in the meantime, I can ask Mr. Rangarajan to step in and speak. Mr. Rangarajan, would you mind taking the point on this? You'll have to speak a little louder. I think there's. No. Can we This is a problem. General, can you hear us? We still can't hear you. Teething troubles here. Raju, is it possible for someone from Elsina to help out here? You're still very faint.
We're not able to. We are not able to hear Mr. Rangarajan.
Yeah, we are not. So no, we can't hear either of them actually.
Oh. General Chandele, sir, we cannot hear you. Maybe you. Yeah, yeah. We just heard something. Sir, do you have a earphone? Can you use a earphone which has a mic? For example, when Elan was speaking, it was very clear. We could hear him very clearly. Even Ravi, you are also very clear. Mr. Mahesh Babu spoke, it was very clear, there was no problem.
I think it's probably on their side. The issue is more probably bandwidth related or
Yes.
device related.
Yes. Maybe they can log in again. Sir, can you log in again? Mr. Rangarajan, sir, can you just log in again?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can, sir. We can.
Okay, I've changed my device. I've come to the mobile.
Okay.
Okay, great, sir. I think then you can go ahead, sir, please.
Right. Okay. So, Ravi, thank you and sorry for the interruption. I think I'll begin by just sharing with you how we use the spares that are manufactured by the industry. And for that, I'll give you an idea of the maintenance, repair, and overall echelons that we have in the armed forces. Starting with the Army, firstly, just to give you an idea of the size, the ratio between the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force would be something like 7:1:2 in terms of strength of personnel as well as strength of or the assets in terms of weapons and equipment. Right. So the major problems would be with the Army, except of course. Are you able to hear me, gentlemen?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Except, of course, that the Navy and the Air Force has a large proportion of more technical equipment, latest technology, and the proportion of electronics in the naval and Air Force platforms is substantially larger and sometimes as much as half the cost of the platforms, that is the aircraft or the ship as it may be. But take the armed forces, we have a 3 echelon system of repair. That means in the unit repair level, then in the field and base. And base is more like a factory. So we also follow a system of replace forward and repair backwards, because in an operational scenario, you cannot wait for spares to fetch up to the front users, and they have to be there available to avoid critical equipment becoming unusable. So we have spares stocked behind. We have to have spares stocked right up front. And therefore, requirement of spares also, they will be distributed over a multiple, uh, places where they are going to be used, is going to be much larger. And of course, our system otherwise works on a pull system. That means demands go up to the various inventory holding authorities, and then they are replenished by the authorities which are holding these spares. And we have a peculiar system. For example, all electronic spares they are procured based on our requirements, which are forecasted well in time. They go to a central ordnance depot at Agra. This depot is designated depot for all, and from this depot they will be distributed downwards to intermediate depots and to field level units holding spares based on their requirements. Initially, when units are deployed and provided equipment which have electronic components as part of the equipment, they carry with them a manufacturer's recommended list of spares, and these amount to roughly 2 years requirements of spares for each of the equipment which they are holding. And then, based on the usage, demands are created by the user units and forwarded up the chain. If the intermediate depot has the spares, it will send it forward. Otherwise, the demand goes up to the central ordnance depot, from where then it will be sent downwards. So it's a rather complex system, and we are now examining the possibility of a push system, that from wherever the spares are manufactured, if they could be directly sent to the units which require them. So we are working on that system, and that would be a little more efficient system, because the ordnance depot system which we have currently is the legacy of the World War II era, when our theaters of operations were far separated and we had to stock years worth of requirements, because transshipment of the spares took a lot of time. So it is being looked into now if they can have the manufacturers provide outlets from where the spares can be directly collected. This is as far as the Army. As far as the Navy is concerned, they have spares on board the platform, whether it's a ship or a submarine or it's a aviation helicopter of the Navy. They have spares for it on board the platform. And then after that, the spares are located with the naval yards or the dockyards, where the ships go for maintenance, that is periodic maintenance. They go for repair and refit if there is a failure on the platform. So there they would be put into a dry dock or something, and then the spares are provided from these dockyards itself. And similarly, in the Air Force, they have technicians on the bases from where the aircraft are operating. They will carry out the first line repair, and they have first line repair spares with them. And beyond that, you have base repair depots stretched all across the country, who provide base level repairs and base level maintenance facilities to the aircraft, for which they have the designated spares with them. So the proportion of electronic spares in the Navy and the Air Force, like I mentioned to you, is much larger. And nowadays, in the Army as well, all systems have a substantial amount of electronics spares and sub-assemblies on board. Even if it is a tank, we have a separate category of tank electronic spares which are required, whether it is a aviation helicopter, which is also requiring a large number of electronic spares. So all these spares have to be provisioned, provided, and have to be available immediately, because we cannot afford to keep an equipment or a platform out of action for a long time. So this is the sort of problem that we have. Added to that is that, as you are aware, a large proportion of the equipment in our armed forces is imported. Roughly 70% imported and 30% indigenized. And when we say 30% indigenized, and BEL being the primary supplier of electronic equipment to all the three services, its share of electronics also has a large percentage of imported components on their equipment. So it's not that when you say Bell 30% indigenized, so everything is indigenized. No, there are a large number of spares which are to be sourced from outside the country. So there is a constant effort to sort of indigenize the manufacture of electronic equipment, but that hasn't happened yet. Large number of sub-assemblies are being imported for all the equipment which all the three armed forces have. Then imported equipment is not just from one country. You have equipment from Russia, you have from the United States, you have from Israel, you have from France. Today itself, the Rafale has been formally inducted into the country, and from United Kingdom and from some other smaller countries, much lesser amount. But from a large number of countries, we have uh, equipment which is imported. And then the spares with them are different category. A Russian equipment will have different type of spares and all. And we have not been able to achieve any sort of a standardization between Russian spare parts with the electronics equipment with the equipment of other countries. So we have to stock spares from all the countries with us if we have to repair the relevant equipment which has been imported from that particular country. So as regards uh, uh, shifting the base of manufacturing or the supply chain to within the country, I think I'll come back after a little gap. We'll allow other colleagues to give their point of view, and then I shall explain what is an effort which is being made with one of the countries to have the supply chain shifted to India. Okay, Ravi, back to you.
Thank you, General. So, Mr. Rangarajan, can you hear us? And
Yeah, I can hear
okay,
you. Am
now
I?
you're audible. This is good.
Okay, very good.
So please go
Very
ahead.
good. Good, good. Okay, just before it goes off, let me quickly start my talk. Thank you for having me on the panel. And to give you a short introduction, we've been very many years in design and development. As our general was saying, we import most of the things in India for defense and aerospace. But we are one of the few companies who have been designing from scratch. I hope I'm audible. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, fine. So we're one of the companies who've been designing from scratch. We have a base in Chennai all through, and for last 2 decades plus, we've been designing for aerospace and defense in India. And we build almost all the products here ourselves. We start with DRDO, and then we built up the full systems now in radars, electronic warfare, some avionics, fire control system for BrahMos and things like that. Okay, now coming back to our story here, that is the strides India is taking in this domain, and what is the perspective of the electronics sector supply chain in India. I'll look at the first part. Like our general is saying, since all along we've been importing everything, and PSUs and DRDO are the only agencies doing some systems here, and there was very little of industry in India. Now, the change has taken place because, like automotive, people are saying it's a good things happen in India. We're also very bullish about defense and aerospace in India today because the government is very clear that this 70-30 ratio has to be reversed. And we need to have made more in India here. Not so much in components, but at least systems level, we need to build our systems and equipment here, which is actually a lot more value add here rather than in a high volume industry where components become a large part of the value. Here, the value add is very much higher. The component value is much lower. So the first thing is to try to address that value add and see if we can do this in India and we can maintain the supply chain here. So we are very glad in this industry because the market is really opening up. The good points first, instead of letting the negatives today. The first point is we are opening up the industry. The defense procurement policies continues to be modified to see that more is made in industry. The strategic partner model is also coming up to say the platforms will be done in India. They also put a figure that minimum 50% value add has to be shown in India. That is, you can't import more than 50% in foreign exchange to do this. So this is actually driving up, the need. If you have to comply, you need to do more in India. So this is actually pushing as a policy level directive to see that things are done in India. So that is needed here. Here, government plays a very important role because these policy directives. It's very difficult to open up this industry. nobody would like to dip the supply chain. Everybody thinks not discovered in their country is not a product there, and it's not a volume industry. So disrupting supply chains is also a problem for them, quality assurance and all that. So government has to play a part, and government is playing a part in opening up the market, which will immediately push up industry to start spending more. The second is our own government in Tamil Nadu is also doing its bit, because we part of the aerospace and defense. They have a special policy here. They have some aids, grants, exemptions, and things like that. So they are doing this, and we have a Tamil Nadu Invest a group here, which is value adding to say that single window clearance is pushing things very proactive on a more like a private industry. They are trying to push things in India into Tamil Nadu. We are personally having some experience with them. They're going for very large expansion in our own infrastructure in Siriseri. So they are helping us to, see that some of the value adds is adding from them. So this is one thing which Tamil Nadu government is doing, and helping us approach plans. The second is they're also, as part of the defense corridor, because it's Tamil Nadu and Uttar Pradesh, there is also testing infrastructure which has been initiated, for which, again, we got invited to this. So we are trying to participate in the whole thing. Here we need a substantial testing in terms of antenna testing, AMMC compliance testing, vibration, thermal cycling, the kind of tests we need to do, which is very infrastructure sensitive. So this is another area where they are, giving in and giving some money and putting some schemes inside where we contribute 25%, they contribute 75%. So some kind of schemes are being done aggressively. So these are good things which is happening. One is market opening up. Second is some infrastructure is being developed, and some schemes are there. But however, having said that, all is not good, because still, unlike your industries which you talked about today, here we have a single customer. That becomes a lot of problem entering the industry. Second is the timeline and predictability of the industry. Even today, the RFI to the contract takes about 4 to 5 years. It's a long time to stay invested, and you need to have product before you enter the industry. So the government needs to do a bit more to see that we become competitive and things are made in India. They are attempting, but something more is needed. Second point, we have an issue is the budgets on Indian spend on budgets is still lacking. A large portion of our Indian budget is actually goes to imports on G2G procurement. So slowly that has to get modified, changed. More has to be spent in India has to happen to enthuse industries to take this next level. The third problem is that, you see, all along, if you say value add or design has been done in the last 50 odd years only in DRDO. So people like us, MSMEs, who were actually started working with them, started doing some designs of parts and subsystems. So our competency has been doing parts and subsystems, not the entire system, because that is held in government. And then transfer of technology goes to companies like Bharat Electronics to build end systems. Whereas MOD buys full systems, they don't buy parts. So obviously there's a gap, and there's a gap. So we see the tail, we don't see the elephant, and where the government wants the elephant. So you have a policy level hiatus there. How do you fill that policy gap? How do industries make the full systems? The design has to happen. There has to be some thinking and partnership has to happen in DRDO. An initiation of something is being done, but more needs to be done to fill the gap. So what really happened is, if you say, supply chain, you have manufacturing competencies made in the MSME in terms of production, engineering, etc., and some subsystems. But still, design is also partly in MSME, not in full systems. So this is something which has to get changed and improved. Look at the scenario, how things will change as we see it because of the impetus government is giving towards the industry. And, we think that this first change is going to happen because of market, which is the Indian content mandating 50%, 60% Indian content. This is going to increase the manufacturing into India. Everybody who is going to quote, the larger companies who are going to do this, or people like us who are going to quote, has to find more done in India, made in India requirements. So collaborations will happen, partnerships will happen. We need to find out how this, even the foreigners have to come here, set up establishment or buy in India to meet that 60% requirement. So that is one thing which has happened. Second thing which happened is the last 2-3 years, actually we were very, very pleasantly surprised. When you say, Indian industry was allowed to quote in MOD tenders only from 2013-14. Before that, people like us cannot quote MOD tenders. There's only government and foreigners, and Indian industry was not allowed to quote. That change has happened in the last 5-6 years. But in the last 2-3 years, what I'm seeing is when Indian tenders come in the RFI and the RFP stages, we find that there is a lot more. 12 companies are quoting, 6 or 7 companies are quoting designed in India products, which is a welcome change, which is happening. The general will like to hear. Since you're participating, we see the competitors. We find a lot more design in India for programs less than 1,000 crores per tender. We find that there are quite a few Indian-made organizations, Indian systems are being quoted. Of course, we have to go through the process and see whether the design happens and a product is going through qualifications, it goes to process trials, and then get it. We ourselves did one in 2014 when tender came for a radar for aircraft landing. It's called precision approach radar. We decided to design the radar ourselves instead of importing the technology, and other people are doing this. We designed a phased array radar, installed it, go through certifications. We got a 380 crore order in 2019. Of course, it took 5 years to get the order. We developed it in 16, demonstrated, and we had to wait 3 years for the order. But the point is, things are changing, and if there is we access the opportunity, there's a possibility of a larger order book which is happening here. So one thing change is happening is people are quoting more in India. Second is, with this opportunity and 50% has to get done in India, if you have to be competitive, we will try to look at value-added services within India, and partnerships will happen. So this is the second change which I'm seeing happening. But what change we want to see happening is the certifications on a defense and aerospace is very, very large. The requirements is huge. It takes enormous time, and government involvement is very, very high because they have to approve from first particle test to subsequent production units. They get third-party inspectors in Government of India, inspect, validate, and dispatch. Army, Navy, Air Force relies on them to do final acceptance. It takes enormous effort to do this, and already they are burdened. If more is done in India, they're going to be overburdened. We can see this because there are a lot of delays in sending people to inspect here. I think government has to really look into how to, give training to industry, audit the industry on their qualification standards, and allow self-certification. I think this is mandatory for which to happen. The change is going to happen. As far as Indian ESDM requirements are concerned, here, as everybody knows, all electronic components are imported, but the value add here is in design. So ESDM is more an ESD we can value add. There is enormous potential value add here, but it is tough industry because there are few pieces. It takes enormous time to get a contract, high risk and investment upfront. But we need to do this, and design and population and systems has to be added. So this is a area where all of us are working on. Data, almost everything, entire system design is done here. PCB design, layout, mechanical part design, fabrication is outsourced. But we're looking at the 70% value add, not the 30% which we are importing from outside. The second area in electronics, if you say supply chain here we can do is the mechanical parts. Again, unlike automotive, where somebody was talking, that volume makes the case packs there. Here, this is precision, a small volume, and we can't redo. But we've had here a fair amount of problems with the SMEs delivering parts as per our design. Getting first-time right parts is a challenge. And then the QA processes in-house training. This is a challenge again because nobody is interested in small volume procurements. So we have to go to smaller vendors, and the processes which they follow, they have to train them in processes. So they have to be more, more oriented towards QC and QA and documentation, and the culture has to improve. So this is the problem we have in defense and aerospace. Of course, we're buying from everybody. We're going to Hyderabad, we're going to Bangalore, we're going to Coimbatore, we're going to Chennai. And more now we're trying to, with the COVID area, we're trying to concentrate more and more in and around inside Tamil Nadu to see that our supply chain disruption is not happening and we're getting into problems. But the movement of supply chain to India, if it has to happen, I think the first thing which is necessary is that India has to buy more in India. That is going to be the first challenge. And the government is on that direction now. A lot of incentives are given. I hope they do this more, and a lot more effort goes into here. Because if we do this and support and spend more in India, I think this is one thing. Our strengthening of supply chain happens within Indian context. Because once it happens, all of us know that we are definitely low cost. We don't have to compete with the Chinese here because defense equipment is very rarely goes to China. because of the IP protection and issues.
I think
People are honest here. We are law-abiding, English-speaking. We have a good legal system. We have, we are quality conscious, and obviously we are lower cost than the European and sale. The far lower sale. We can beat the sale in price. So this is where we are.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Rajan. I really appreciate your comments. So we have only about 10 or so minutes left here. I already got a warning from Rajuji that we're going to have to close in about 10 minutes. So if I can just ask Mahesh, Guru, then Ilan, and then General and Mr. Rangarajan to just give a quick closing comments on what do you see as the top 2 or 3 things that you would like to see in terms of really pushing localization forward on the critical aspects that you mentioned. That would be great. And we can close.
In the automobile, I think when Government of India has come up with a FAME scheme, they have very clearly said a phased manufacturing program of localization. So that is going to help. The second one, which we have to look at, is some of the sectors, like let's say lithium-ion batteries, or let's say some of the silicon carbides or silicon manufacturing investments are strategic, and it needs some tie-up between the agencies like government, industry, and some of the supply chain of raw materials. So if a team of cross-functional team members can be put together from industry, government in this, and if our vision has to local content, what we normally miss is we take aggregate India's requirement and start making locally. I think we should think about what is the global demand for such product, whether it is component or subsystems or systems, and see what should be our value add in those global supply chain, and then start strategically investing rather than tactically looking at it. So that would be my suggestion, to look at how do we add to the global value chain, either in automobile or electronics or anything. In Tamil Nadu, I can tell you, Tamil Nadu has already started something on electronics manufacturing. If they can aggregate them together and put various industries together and take some strategic initiative, it will help.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Guru, from your side?
Yeah, so again, I'm back. I think Mahesh again said it all, very relevant in the context of auto. The thing I would stress is maybe as a country, we need a relook on our FTA policies. We have a lot of free trade agreements with ASEAN, with Malaysia, with Thailand, with Vietnam. This is an extremely low barrier route for electronics to enter India. And that's what is happening quite a bit, even in auto. I think it's something that has to change if we have to push for far higher levels of localization. The second one would be the sustained investment on component infrastructure. On components, and this is something that has to change, both in terms of semiconductors, quality PCBs for the auto sector, quality auto component, auto qualified components to come in, so that we are a definite ecosystem for auto electronics. And the last thing is also what Mahesh touched upon. We shouldn't constrain ourselves to just India for India. Eventually, electronics is a volume game, and this needs to be focus. I mean, the focus needs to be on as much on exports from India for the whole world as it is for India.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Guru. Appreciate it. Evan?
Yeah, looking at 2025, we are seeing around $400 billion spending for electronics manufacturing. In that, even we consider 20%, very conservative. So $100 billion need to be come out from semiconductor industry. So instead of going globally talking about trying to do electronics manufacturing localization, government probably need to have a focused approach to pull those top players in the semiconductor chip manufacturers in phase 1, phase 2, back-end operation first, front-end operation second. Something like that, if you can able to do, it will give a good back-end value-add chain to the electronics manufacturing. So that's what the point I would like to request to government and the industries. Thanks, Ravi.
Thanks, Shivan. General?
Yeah. So where Rangarajan mentioned about defense, the government has now given out a negative list for the next few years as to what equipment cannot be imported and needs to be manufactured within the country. And of that also, as you are aware, 50% ought to be indigenous content. But the question is how much of that indigenous content will be from electronics or electronic sports, spares and assemblies. Then regarding exports, the new policy which has been formulated by the government itself is titled Defense Production and Export Policy. So we are looking at, you see, already you are aware that total defense exports from the country last year were in the region of 10,000 crores, and we are looking at, tripling or quadrupling that in the next 3 to 4 years. And of course, if equipment is exported from here and the electronic components form part of that, then there will be a requirement of electronic spares to be manufactured within the country. As regarding just exporting spares, I mean, you are all aware that when you export electronic spares, you have to compete with the world prices. Why would anybody buy from you if they're getting cheaper from some other source? So, but as mentioned, the domestic consumption itself is sufficient for us to kickstart the indigenous production of semiconductors within the country. And regarding our requirement of the repair systems in the country for the armed forces, we have started a bit of indigenization of electronic spares and sub-assemblies in each of the 3 services through our indigenization departments. The Army has one, Navy and Air Force too, and we from time to time have interaction with the electronic manufacturing industry and show them the spares that we need, spares and assemblies that we need for our equipment. Unfortunately, the numbers are limited, the demands are irregular, and we do not have circuit diagrams, etc. in most cases. So there is a problem because there is no economic value in that. But I think the government needs to sweeten the value for the industry to be able to urge them to manufacture those electronic spares and sub-assemblies within the country because just having an equipment out of action because non-availability of spares is not the done thing. May I just also add that last year in September, India and Russia had signed the intergovernment agreement for co-production of spares and sub-assemblies of Russian origin equipment being used by the armed forces of the country. And that was followed up by guidelines issued by the MOD as to how these spares would be identified. So subsequent to that, a complete list of spares is now available with FICCI, the Society of Indian Defense Manufacturers, who will forward it to the Russian Federal Service for Military Technology Cooperation. And very recently, only last month, the Russian Parliament has passed a law permitting Russian OEMs to have JVs with Indian industry for the co-manufacturing of spare parts which are required by the Indian Armed Forces. So let's see how much of that is electronics, but certainly there is scope for it because, as you are aware, that number of aircraft in the Air Force, starting from MiGs to Sukhois to Illusions to Antonov, are from Russia, and some of the naval systems, frigates, submarines are also from Russia, and also a lot of equipment in the army is from Russia. So the electronic systems of the manufacturing hub could probably be shifted. The condition that these spares must be required for a long period. That means at least 7 years is the minimum stipulated. And of course, in our the main platforms in the armed forces, like the ships and the aircraft and the tanks and all, serve for 40 years, 50 years. So we have a long-standing demand for spares of all these equipment. So that is what I wanted to add. So, thank you.
Thank you, General. Mr. Rangarajan, if you can round it off, then we can.
Yeah,
close it.
we're already extended the time. So only 2 points. One is, we are looking at the 70% value add rather than the component industry. So to do that, maybe government should also, there are two problems. One is the high risk in upfront development before a contract happens. So to sweeten the deal, as the general says, if there's a price preference for more indigenous content, we need to look at that. Today, we don't have that scheme because we need to, the development cost has to be appropriate over one order. So it becomes a problem, though on a longer term, we may be inexpensive compared to imports. And also there's a lifetime buy, which is going to be cost. So India, like you said, spare parts not available. All this problem won't be there if you do it in India. But that we need to sweeten the deal initially. So differentiate on how much more made in India, maybe price sensitive, give that. Second point, which India does not do, is a tender, 0-1 tender, always, L1, and a compliance factor in L1. So this is again a problem because there's no specialization on one hand. So you're allowing more development to happen because you can't go single vendoring or, that's not possible. So you need to have a policy structure where if there are competencies, differentiation should be, appreciated and value add should be provided. That kind of structure has to happen. You need to seed the forest. You cannot have a forest overnight. So we need to have, and also technology development fund should be more, much more money has to be spent during development stages. So these kind of initiatives, if it does, I think in the next 5 to 7 years, we'll find a lot more made in India than what is happening today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rangarajan. So, Raju, perhaps we can, I'll just wrap it up and then hand it over to you to close. Basically, I really appreciate everybody coming on and giving their perspectives, wide range of industries actually. The common themes seems to be that we really need to bring more component production into India, bring more value-added design into India, and then really build the strategic ecosystems and invest in strategic ecosystems as a combination of government, industry, academia, and advanced materials and supply chain partnerships. We are an advanced materials company. We've been in India for a long time. We are a multinational, but we've been in India for 89 years now. And we sort of grew up with the electronics industry and automotive industry in India. So, from our perspective, we are committed to bringing technology to India and collaborate with both the industry verticals and supply chains in India. I think as far as the defense portion is concerned, clearly there's a lot of opportunity. There is a ways to go in terms of really defining and understanding what needs to be done, and then the government really providing the crossing the chasm investments and funding to incentivize more localization for the defense sector. And then the medical electronics and specialty spaces, I think what Ilan mentioned in terms of the localization aspects would be really appreciated. So that's, I think we are a little bit over time, but once again, thanks to the panelists for spending an hour of your time to participate, and really appreciate your comments. Thank you again. Raju, over to you, please.
My most sincere thanks to all the panelists. I think it has been a wonderful session, and I think the time was short because we miscalculated. I think, for this kind of a discussion, we really needed more time, but we really appreciate, I think this was a very valuable discussion. And I'm not only saying it for the sake of saying it because it is said after every session, because I think we covered three very major, I would say, parts or, segments of the industry. One is the automotive, of course, and the automotive segment has really gone through a very big dip, and it's been almost like a catharsis kind of situation. And now with the change to the electric vehicle domain, there'll be a lot more changes which I think you all have to adjust to. I just hope that the policy stays on course and the government gives enough time for the industry to adjust. And I think it's a very big opportunity for India, and India has a very vibrant auto industry. So we really think that this is something that we need to handle very carefully and make sure that our industry keeps on progressing. Defense, of course, sir, is a completely different cup of tea, and it is a very, very big opportunity for us now. As you know, General Chandele and Mr. Rangarajan both have expressed. So we had some problems with the internet, so I think there was a bit of a hindrance in the communication. But still, there is no doubt that this is something, and the Atmanirbhar vision is something which largely rests with the defense industry, the defense and aerospace industry. I think that is another very big opportunity for us. And thank you very much, to Elan for being here from the EMS sector. The EMS sector is, we are actually projecting 25 to 30% growth of EMS every year now for the next at least 4 or 5 years, or maybe even more. In fact, we had a session just before this one in which we were discussing about EMS and components. And all the companies that were present, there were 6 of them, they all said that next year they are going to grow by at least 50%. So I think things are doing well, and I hope that COVID will leave our country very soon, and we'll all be looking forward to a very bright future. Those are my last comments, and my sincere thanks to all of you on behalf of Belsina and on behalf of the Tamil Nadu government who are the hosts for this event. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.